If you ever find a locked door in the Hayes mansion, Natalie, do yourself one favor. Walk away. That warning had been given to me on my first day as a maid. I should have listened. The trouble was, on that rainy Thursday night, I had no idea which door they meant. At 24, I had learned to survive by keeping my head down, doing my work, and asking as few questions as possible. The Hayes mansion sat on several acres outside Manhattan, behind iron gates and a long stone driveway that seemed to disappear into the trees. It was beautiful in the way expensive places often were, quiet, polished, almost unreal. I worked there because my mother needed medication and because a maid's paycheck, even a modest one, could keep the lights on for another month. That night, the house had finally gone quiet after a private dinner. Crystal glasses had been cleared. The last guests had left. Most of the staff had gone home. My supervisor handed me a list and pointed toward the basement hallway. "Just finish the west corridor," she said. "Mr. Hayes doesn't like anyone wandering around down there." I nodded. Mr. Hayes. Nathaniel Hayes. Even I knew his name. Everyone in the city seemed to know it. He owned hotels, restaurants, construction companies, and enough property to make numbers feel meaningless. People lowered their voices whenever they mentioned him. I had only seen him twice. Both times, he had been surrounded by men in tailored suits, moving through the mansion as though every room belonged to him because, in a way, it did. I had never spoken to him. I had never planned to. The basement was colder than the rest of the house. My shoes clicked softly against the stone floor as I pushed my cleaning cart along the corridor. Rain tapped against the narrow windows near the ceiling. Somewhere behind the walls, an old heating system hummed. I reached the end of the west corridor and noticed something strange. A small silver key lay on the floor beneath an old painting. I picked it up. There was no label, no room number, just a tiny black mark engraved near the handle. I looked around. Empty hallway. Silence. I should have placed it on the supervisor's desk. Instead, I noticed a narrow panel behind the painting. My fingers brushed the edge. It moved. My breath caught. Behind it was a dark wooden door I had never seen before. The key fit perfectly. I hesitated for several seconds. Then I turned it. The lock clicked. The door opened into a room far larger than the space behind the wall should have allowed. Shelves covered every side. Old boxes, black folders, sealed envelopes, photographs arranged in careful rows. This wasn't a storage room. It was an archive. My heart began beating faster. I stepped inside, telling myself I would only look for a few seconds before leaving. Then the door swung shut behind me. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. "No," I whispered. I tried again. Nothing. My phone was upstairs in my locker. The only light came from a small lamp above the shelves. I turned slowly toward the photographs. Most showed unfamiliar faces. Some were dated years ago. Then I saw one that made my breath stop. A young man stood beside an older woman outside the Hayes estate. His face was unmistakable. Nathaniel Hayes. I moved closer. Under the photograph was a date from 15 years earlier, and beneath his name were 3 words that made the entire room feel colder. Not the air. I stared at the file beneath it. Then I heard footsteps on the other side of the door. The footsteps stopped outside the door. I held my breath and listened. 1 second passed, then another. The handle moved. I backed away from it until my shoulders touched the shelves. I did not know what frightened me more, being trapped in a secret room, or being discovered inside it. The lock clicked, but the door did not open. Instead, a voice came through the wood. "Miss Brooks?" I recognized it immediately. Nathaniel Hayes. My throat tightened. "Yes." There was a pause. "Why are you in there?" I looked at the folders surrounding me. There were too many things I could not explain. "I found a key." His voice became quieter. "Where?" "Under a painting." Another pause. "Do not touch anything else." I almost laughed from sheer nerves. "I am trapped in here, Mr. Hayes." "I am not exactly planning a tour." The silence that followed felt different. Not angry, measured. "Step away from the shelves." I did. A hidden mechanism released somewhere near the wall, and the door opened slowly. Nathaniel stood in the hallway alone. No guards, no staff, just him. He looked exactly as I remembered from the few times I had seen him in the house. Dark hair, a perfectly fitted black suit, and an expression so controlled that it was difficult to know what he was thinking. His eyes moved past me and settled on the open file in my hand. "Put it down." I hesitated. The paper trembled between my fingers. "I did not mean to find this." "I know." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "That does not change what you saw." I looked at the photograph again. The young Nathaniel stared back at me from 15 years earlier, standing beside the older woman near the estate. Under his name, those same 3 words seemed impossible to ignore. Not the heir. I looked up. "What does this mean?" Nathaniel did not answer. His gaze remained on the file. "It means you should not be here." "I know that." "Then you understand why you cannot repeat what you saw." My stomach tightened. "Are you threatening me?" His expression changed slightly, almost with surprise. "No." He looked toward the shelves. "I am warning you." That answer unsettled me more than anger would have. I glanced around the vault. On another shelf, I noticed a row of envelopes marked with dates. One was labeled with the same year as the photograph. Another carried a name I recognized from a newspaper article about the Hayes family. I pointed toward it. "What happened 15 years ago?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "That is not your concern." "Maybe not, but I am already locked inside your secret room, so I think it became my concern." For the first time, something almost human passed across his face. Exhaustion. Not fear, not anger. Something older. He walked to the shelf and removed a black folder. He did not open it. He simply held it in his hand and stared at the cover. "There are things in this room that destroyed people who knew too much." I swallowed. "Then why keep them here?" He looked at me. "Because sometimes the truth is more dangerous when it disappears." The words stayed with me. I did not know what they meant, but I knew they mattered. Then Nathaniel opened the folder beneath the photograph and turned it toward me. Inside was a single typed page. At the bottom was a signature. I read the name once, then again. My heart sank when I recognized it. It belonged to Nathaniel's father. The name on the page was Marcus Hayes, Nathaniel's father. I looked from the signature to Nathaniel's face, waiting for an explanation. He did not give me one. He simply closed the folder and placed it back on the shelf. "You were never supposed to see that," he said. His voice was calm, but something in it made the room feel smaller. I folded my arms. "Then maybe you should explain why it was sitting in a room I never knew existed." Nathaniel studied me for a moment. I expected anger. Instead, he asked a question. "How much did you read?" "Enough to know someone lied about your family." His expression barely changed, but his eyes sharpened. "And what else?" I hesitated. "I saw the words about you not being the heir." Silence. He looked away first. That surprised me. I had expected a command, a threat, anything that would make me step back. Instead, he walked toward a small table near the center of the vault and rested one hand against it. 15 years ago, my father died," he said. "Everyone believed I became the heir because he chose me." I listened. "But this file says something different." He nodded once. "It says I was never supposed to inherit anything." "Why?" Nathaniel looked at the shelves. "Because someone believed I did not have the right to." I felt a chill move through me. "Who?" He did not answer. The quiet hum of the old lamp seemed louder. Rain tapped faintly against the basement windows somewhere beyond the stone walls. Then he reached for another envelope. This one was sealed and marked with a date from the same year. He turned it over in his hand before speaking again. "My father left instructions before he died, instructions that were hidden from me." "What kind of instructions?" "The kind that could have changed everything." I stepped closer, despite myself. "Then why did you not open them?" Nathaniel met my eyes. "Because I spent 15 years believing the person who hid them was protecting me." That sentence stayed between us. I thought about the way he had entered the vault alone, the way he had looked at his father's signature. There was no cold arrogance in his face now, only a man standing in front of a history he did not understand. "So you kept this room secret because you were afraid of what you would find?" His mouth tightened. "I kept it secret because every time someone searched for the truth, another piece of my family disappeared." I did not know what to say to that. I looked at the sealed envelope again. "What is inside?" "I do not know. That makes 2 of us." For the first time, the corner of his mouth almost moved, but the expression vanished quickly. Then he walked toward me and held out the envelope. I stared at it. "What are you doing?" "You found the room." He placed the envelope in my hand. "You found the file. Maybe you are the person who was meant to find this." My fingers tightened around the paper. "You trust me?" His answer came quietly. "No." He looked directly into my eyes. "But I think the person who locked this room may have trusted someone exactly like you." Before I could respond, a faint sound came from the hallway outside. Footsteps. Nathaniel turned toward the door. This time, his expression changed completely. "Someone else is here." He reached for the lock, then stopped and looked back at me. "Natalie, whatever happens next, stay beside me." The footsteps were getting closer. Nathaniel moved to the vault door and listened without making a sound. I stood beside him, still holding the sealed envelope he had given me. My palms were damp. "Who is it?" I whispered. Nathaniel raised one finger, asking for silence. The footsteps stopped outside. A key touched the lock. My heart jumped. Nathaniel looked at me and spoke so quietly I almost missed the words. "Stay here." He opened the door just enough to look through the narrow gap. A few seconds passed. Then he closed it again. "Nobody?" I asked. "Not yet." He looked at the ceiling, thinking. The security system should have alerted me if anyone entered this level. Then how did they get here? He did not answer. Instead, he walked to the far wall and pressed a small brass button hidden beneath the edge of a shelf. A section of stone shifted, revealing a second passage. I stared at him. "There is another exit?" "There is always another exit." He motioned for me to follow. We stepped into the narrow passage, just as the main vault door opened behind us. I heard the soft click of someone entering the room, followed by the faint movement of papers. Nathaniel pulled the hidden panel closed. We stood in near darkness. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear his too. The passage smelled like old stone and dust, and somewhere beneath us, water moved through pipes. "Whoever came in there knows about the vault," I whispered. "Yes." "And they know we are here?" Nathaniel looked at the sealed envelope in my hand. "Maybe they know about that." We continued through the passage. It opened into a small room behind the library on the first floor. Nathaniel pushed aside a bookcase, and we stepped into the quiet mansion. The clock on the wall showed 11:42 in the evening. It had been less than an hour since I entered the basement, yet it felt like an entire day had passed. Nathaniel locked the hidden entrance and turned toward me. "You are staying in the guest wing tonight." I shook my head. "I need to go home." "You cannot. My mother is expecting me." His expression softened for the first time. "Then call her." I looked at my phone, which was still in my locker downstairs. Before I could move, Nathaniel handed me his. "Use mine." I stared at him. "You are trusting me with your phone. I am trusting you to call your mother." I almost smiled. Almost. I dialed her number and heard her tired voice answer. I told her I had been asked to stay late and would be home in the morning. It was not the whole truth, but it was enough to keep her from worrying. When the call ended, Nathaniel stood by the library window, watching the rain streak the glass. "What was in the letter?" I asked. He looked back at me. "I have not opened it." "Why not?" He took a slow breath. "Because once I do, there is no going back." I stepped closer and held out the envelope. "Then open it." He stared at me for several seconds. Finally, he took it. The seal broke with a quiet tear. He unfolded the paper. His eyes moved across the page. Once, twice, then all the color seemed to leave his face. "What does it say?" I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time that night, Nathaniel Hayes looked genuinely shaken. "It says my father knew I was never supposed to become the heir." He lowered the page, and he named the person who made sure I did. The name on the page was not a stranger. It was someone I had seen at the Hayes mansion more times than I could count. "Who?" I asked, but Nathaniel did not answer immediately. He folded the letter once and placed it on the library table as if the paper itself had become too heavy to hold. "Evelyn Hayes," he finally said. My breath caught. "Your mother?" "Mother." He nodded. "She died when I was 17. I remembered the portrait in the main hallway, a graceful woman with calm eyes and a quiet smile. I had dusted that frame every week since I started working in the house. What did she have to do with all of this? Nathaniel looked toward the dark windows. Rain continued to fall against the glass, steady and soft. According to my father, Evelyn discovered that someone inside the family was moving money and changing records before I ever became involved in the business. I listened without moving. She wanted to expose it, he continued. My father told her to wait. He believed he could handle it privately. And what happened? Nathaniel's eyes settled on me. She died before she could finish. The words landed quietly. No dramatic pause, no raised voice. Somehow that made them harder to hear. I looked down at the letter. Does it say who she was afraid of? Nathaniel picked it up again. Not directly. He turned the page over. But there is a reference to a ledger. A specific ledger that was supposed to be kept in this house. I thought about the vault, the shelves, the photographs, the hidden passage. Maybe it is still there. Nathaniel looked at me. That is what worries me. He returned to the library table and began checking the old dates listed in the letter. I stood beside him, watching his finger move across the page. One date matched a folder I had seen in the vault. Another matched a photograph. Then I noticed something strange. Nathaniel. He looked up. What? I pointed to a handwritten mark in the corner of the letter. That symbol. It was the same small black mark I had seen beside the silver key. His expression changed instantly. He took the paper from me and studied it under the lamp. That was on the key. I nodded. Yes. He looked toward the library door. Then the key was not meant to open the vault. I frowned. What do you mean? It was meant to tell someone where to look next. I felt a chill move across my arms. The hidden room was not the final destination. It was only the beginning. Nathaniel opened a drawer in the writing desk and removed a small map of the estate. He spread it across the table. There are 3 old service areas beneath the property, he said. One was sealed years ago, another was converted into storage, the third was never listed on the official plans. And you think the ledger is there? I think my father wanted someone to find it. I looked at the clock. Nearly midnight. My mother believed I was finishing a late shift. I was standing in a mansion filled with secrets that seemed to grow deeper every minute. Then Nathaniel's phone vibrated on the table. He checked the screen. His face became still. What is it? I asked. He turned the phone toward me. It was a message from the head of security. Someone had accessed the basement level again. Nathaniel looked at me. We are not the only ones looking for the ledger. The security message remained on the screen. Someone had entered the basement again. I looked at Nathaniel, waiting for him to react, but he was already moving. We need to see the service plans, he said. He crossed the library to a locked cabinet near the fireplace and entered a code. Inside were old property records, maintenance maps, and boxes labeled with years. He pulled out a rolled blueprint and spread it across the table. The original estate had a 4th level beneath the basement, he said. I leaned closer. A 4th level. It was removed from the official plans after my father renovated this place. His finger stopped at a narrow staircase, hidden beneath the west wing. This is where the old service tunnel leads. I remembered the strange passage beneath the vault. Then the person in the basement could be looking for the same place. Nathaniel nodded. Exactly. He folded the blueprint and handed it to me. Stay here. I shook my head. You said the person who knows about the vault may know about the ledger. If you go down there alone, and the same person has been searching all night, you may never know what they already found. Nathaniel studied me. You are a maid. I know. This is not your problem. I looked at him. It became my problem when you gave me your father's letter. He was silent for a moment. Then he gave a small nod. Stay close. We left the library and moved through the quiet hallway. The mansion felt completely different after midnight. During the day, it looked elegant and welcoming. Now every clock seemed louder, every shadow deeper. We reached the basement entrance and descended the stone steps. The lights were still on. Nothing looked disturbed. Then Nathaniel stopped. A single folder lay on the floor near the vault door. That was not there before, he said. He picked it up carefully and opened it. Inside was a list of names. Some were crossed out. Others had dates beside them. At the bottom was one name I recognized immediately. Mine. Natalie Brooks. I stared at the page. Why is my name there? Nathaniel did not answer. He turned to the next sheet. It contained basic information about me, including my job, my mother's address, and the date I had started working at the mansion. "Someone has been watching you," he said quietly. My stomach tightened. Why would anyone care about me? Nathaniel looked toward the vault. "Because you found something they needed hidden." He handed me the folder. "And because they may believe you took the ledger." I stared at my own name again. I had spent months cleaning rooms, carrying trays, and staying invisible. Yet someone had already written my name into a story I had never agreed to join. Nathaniel looked at the old service map. "We are going to the 4th level." We walked to the far end of the basement, where a narrow stone arch was partly hidden behind stacked cabinets. Nathaniel moved one cabinet aside, revealing a small iron door. There was no handle, only the same black symbol I had seen on the key, and the letter. I touched the mark. A soft click echoed through the corridor. The door opened by itself. Beyond it was a staircase, descending into darkness. Nathaniel looked at me. "Whatever is down there may explain everything." I took a slow breath and stepped forward. Then I noticed something carved into the wall beside the first step. It was a message, written in faded letters, for the person who was never meant to inherit. Nathaniel read it once. Then he looked at me. For the first time, I saw something in his expression that I had not seen before. Hope. The staircase seemed to disappear beneath us. Each step descended farther than I expected, and the air grew colder with every foot we took. Nathaniel walked ahead, one hand resting lightly against the stone wall as he followed the narrow passage. I stayed close behind him, clutching the old folder against my chest. The message on the wall stayed in my mind. "For the person who was never meant to inherit." "Nathaniel," I whispered. He stopped. "What? What if that message was not meant for you?" He turned toward me. "Then who was it meant for?" I looked at the folder with my name inside. "Maybe someone who was supposed to find the truth before you did." He studied me for a moment, then continued down the stairs. At the bottom was a small underground room. Unlike the vault above, this place was almost empty. A wooden desk stood in the center. On top of it rested an old leather ledger and a small silver box. Nathaniel approached slowly. He did not touch either one. "My father wrote about a ledger," he said. "This must be it." I moved beside him. The cover was faded, but the same black symbol appeared on the corner. Nathaniel opened it. The first pages contained dates and names. The handwriting matched the letter we had read upstairs. Then we found a series of payments connected to properties across New York. Nathaniel read each entry in silence. His expression became more distant with every page. "These payments were made before I took over," he said. "Who received them?" I asked. He turned the ledger toward me. "Nearly every payment was approved by one person. Evelyn Hayes," I whispered. Nathaniel looked at me. "My mother." I nodded. "But why would she authorize these?" He turned another page. There was a note written beneath one of the entries. "Protect Nathaniel. Keep the truth hidden until he is ready." My chest tightened. "She was trying to protect you." Nathaniel stared at the words. "From whom?" I looked at the names beneath the payments. One name appeared again and again. Robert Callahan, Nathaniel's uncle, a man I had seen at the mansion several times. He was always polite, always composed, always welcomed by the family. Nathaniel closed his eyes for a moment. "Robert was my father's closest advisor. Then maybe he knows about the ledger." Nathaniel looked back at the pages. "He may know more than that." Before I could ask what he meant, the silver box on the desk caught my attention. I pointed toward it. "What is inside?" Nathaniel lifted the lid. Inside was a single photograph of Evelyn and Nathaniel when he was a teenager. On the back, in faded handwriting, were 6 words. "Trust the girl who asks questions." Nathaniel looked at me slowly. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than before. Then he picked up the photograph and turned it over again. Beneath the message was another line, almost hidden by age. "She will find the truth when you refuse to see it." Nathaniel stared at the sentence for several seconds. Then he looked at me with an expression I could not understand. "My mother knew someone like you would eventually find this." I swallowed. "Why me?" Before he could answer, the lights above us flickered once, then twice. A soft chime echoed from the stairs. Nathaniel turned toward the passage. Someone had entered the underground level. He closed the ledger and looked at me. "Stay here." I shook my head. No. He paused. Natalie. I held his gaze. You said I am part of this now. Then let me help you finish it. For the first time, Nathaniel did not argue. He simply nodded. Then the footsteps began moving closer. The footsteps were closer now. I could hear them moving slowly along the narrow passage, each step echoing through the stone like a quiet reminder that we were no longer alone. Nathaniel stood beside the desk, one hand resting on the closed ledger. His face was calm, but his eyes had changed. He was listening carefully. I held my breath. Then the footsteps stopped. A voice came from the passage. Nathaniel. I recognized it immediately. Robert Callahan. Nathaniel's uncle. The man whose name appeared throughout the ledger. Nathaniel looked at me. I could see the question in his eyes. Did I want to stay hidden? I nodded. He stepped toward the entrance and opened the door just enough to look through. Robert. What are you doing down here? Robert's voice remained smooth. I could ask you the same thing. Nathaniel closed the door halfway. I am reviewing old records. At 12:30 in the morning? Robert asked. You always did have strange habits. I watched Nathaniel's expression. He was not fooled. You knew about this room. Silence. Then Robert answered. Your father trusted me with many things. Did he trust you with the ledger? Another pause. What ledger? Nathaniel looked down at the book in his hand. I could almost feel the tension in the room. Robert continued. Come upstairs. We can discuss this properly. Nathaniel did not move. Not yet. His uncle sighed. Nathaniel, there are things you do not understand. I looked at the silver photograph box. The words from Evelyn seemed to glow in my memory. Trust the girl who asks questions. Nathaniel noticed me looking at it. He reached for the photograph and slipped it into his jacket. Then he turned back toward the door. You are right about one thing, Uncle. Robert waited. There are things I do not understand, but I am starting to understand who wanted me to stay confused. Silence filled the passage. Then Robert spoke again, softer this time. Be careful what you think you know. Nathaniel closed the door. We heard Robert walk away. I let out the breath I had been holding. He knows, I whispered. Yes, Nathaniel said. And now he knows we know. He returned to the desk and opened the ledger again. Near the final pages, a folded document had been tucked behind the binding. He pulled it free. It was a property transfer, dated 15 years earlier. The buyer was listed as a company I had never heard of. The signature belonged to Robert. Nathaniel stared at it. Then he noticed something else. A second signature appeared beneath his uncle's, his father's. They worked together, I said. Nathaniel shook his head. Not exactly. He pointed to a handwritten note beside the signatures. My father approved the transfer to protect Evelyn. I looked at him. Protect her from Robert. Maybe. He turned the page. The next note was written in Evelyn's handwriting. Nathaniel must never inherit until the truth is uncovered. My heart sank. She knew something would happen. Nathaniel sat down slowly. My mother spent years trying to keep me out of this. I moved closer, and she left the clues for you anyway. He looked up at me. She left them for the person who would not stop asking questions. I smiled faintly. So that would be me. For the first time that night, Nathaniel smiled too. It lasted only a second, but it changed the room. Then his phone vibrated. He checked the message. The expression disappeared from his face. What is it? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A security alert showed that someone had entered the main library. Nathaniel looked toward the stairs. We need to move. We gathered the ledger, the letter, and the photograph. As we climbed back toward the first floor, I realized the secret was no longer hidden. It was becoming a choice. Nathaniel could expose the truth and risk everything he had built, or protect the empire and continue living inside a lie. When we reached the library, he stopped beside the window. Dawn was still hours away. He looked at me and said quietly, Natalie, I need you to tell me something. If the truth destroys everything I have, will you still believe it is worth telling? I met his eyes. If it can set you free, yes. Nathaniel looked toward the dark city beyond the glass. Then he nodded. Then we finish this tonight. If the truth destroys my family, then let it. Nathaniel's words were barely louder than a whisper, but I felt them settle over the library like a final decision. Outside, rain continued to wash the windows of the Hayes mansion, and somewhere beyond the dark glass, Manhattan was still moving. Inside, everything had gone still. Nathaniel placed the ledger on the desk and looked at me. "We need one more piece." "What piece?" I asked. "Proof that Robert knew my mother had discovered the truth." He crossed to an old cabinet beneath the window and pulled out a box of archived correspondence. My father kept records of every major decision. If Robert was involved, there should be a trail. We searched together. Letters, property records, old meeting notes, tax documents, nothing. The clock moved past 1 in the morning. My hands were tired, but I kept going. Then I noticed a small envelope wedged beneath a stack of receipts. It was addressed in Evelyn's handwriting. Nathaniel stopped breathing for a second when he saw her name. "Open it," I whispered. He did. Inside was a short letter and a second key. The letter began with 6 words. "Nathaniel, trust what you cannot see." I read over his shoulder as he continued. Evelyn explained that she had discovered Robert had been using family properties to move money through companies that did not appear on the official records. She had gathered proof, but she was afraid that confronting him too soon would put Nathaniel in the middle of the conflict. Her final instruction was simple. "When the time comes, do not protect the empire. Protect the truth." Nathaniel lowered the letter. His eyes were glassy, and his voice changed when he spoke. "She knew." I touched the edge of the page. "She knew you would have to choose someday." He nodded. "I thought everything my father built was meant to protect our family." He looked at the ledger. Maybe it was meant to protect a lie. A sound came from the hallway. We both turned. Robert appeared in the doorway. He was calm, perfectly dressed, and almost impossibly composed for a man who had just been exposed by documents bearing his own name. "I wondered when you would find it," he said. Nathaniel did not move. "You knew about the vault." "Yes." "You knew about my mother's records." Robert nodded. "Yes." I looked at Nathaniel. He was not angry now. He looked tired. "Why?" he asked. Robert glanced at me, then back at him. "Because your father believed the truth would destroy you." Nathaniel's voice stayed quiet. "And you decided to choose what I was allowed to know. I thought I was protecting you." I spoke before I could stop myself. "By hiding the truth from him for 15 years. Robert looked at me. "You are very brave for someone who only works in this house." I held his gaze. "Maybe. But I am still right." Nathaniel stepped between us, not threatening, simply making his position clear. "That is enough." Robert exhaled slowly. "Then read the last page of the ledger." Nathaniel did. There, beneath the final transaction, was a note from his father. It stated that Robert had not created the secret accounts. Evelyn had. She had done it as part of a plan to move the family assets away from a larger threat and protect Nathaniel from becoming a target. Robert had been helping her, but he had later hidden the records after she died because he believed Nathaniel was too young to understand the truth. The entire mystery had been twisted by fear, grief, and years of silence. Nathaniel closed the ledger. "You should have told me." Robert lowered his eyes. "I know." The room went quiet. Then Nathaniel turned to me. "You saved me from believing a story that was never complete." I shook my head. "You found the courage to finish it." Dawn was beginning to lighten the windows when Nathaniel walked me to the front entrance. He stopped beside the open door. "You are free to leave, Natalie." I looked back at the mansion, then at him. "I know. And you owe me nothing." A small smile touched my face. "Good." I stepped outside into the cool morning air. 3 weeks later, I returned to the Hayes estate, not as an employee, but because I had chosen to. Nathaniel was waiting near the garden, without an entourage, without the walls that once seemed to surround him. He held out his hand. "This time," he said, "I want you here, because you choose to be." I placed my hand in his. He had spent years trying to protect an empire. I had spent one night trying to uncover the truth. Somehow, the truth had done something greater. It had given both of us a choice. And for the first time, neither of us was afraid of it.